embouchure flexibility is very important, especially for the beginner. We don't want to be just playing in a narrow range like this. If you spend several months in that narrow range, your embouchure will get set and it will be much more difficult to play high notes and low notes. So we want to be able to play those in octaves like this. And it's really quite simple to do on the flute if you begin that way. The first thing we want to do is work on another head joint exercise for flexibility. So we're going to first do the low note, and what you want to do is cover the end of your head joint with the palm of your hand, and we're going to get a low sound. Now, what to remember when we're doing that, first of all, we're using hot air. So if you take your mirror, put steam on it. Now, that's the type of air you want to use. And when you're doing that, of course you're not going to have your mouth wide open like you're putting steam in it, but inside your mouth wants to feel that way. So we want to blow, think, and this time instead of P, I'd like you to think of po, po. So it's a very O and open inside your mouth, like you're yawning and playing at the same time. Po, po. Now air direction, let's grab our Numa Pro. Again, it is very down to that lowest wheel. And again, we're only really covering about 1/4 of the embouchure hole for this very low note. So let's try that on the head joint again together, covering the end with the palm of your hand. Po. And if you notice, the embouchure hole, the opening, is quite large. Now, with our hand covering the end of the head joint, we can also get a high note. Here's our low. Now for that high note, we want to get a very small opening with our lip. Now for the high note embouchure, we want to use a very, very tiny opening. And so we want to concentrate on putting the wet part of the lips together very firmly, saying our P sound. Now I find using this training straw very, very helpful. So what we want to do is put it between the wet part of our lips and firmly push our lips together. And then let's practice blowing these packing peanuts. These are just the type of peanuts you get with a shipment. And because the straw, the opening is so tiny, it's actually difficult to do. After you practice with the packing peanuts, it's much easier to produce a high note on the flute head joint. So, what we want to do to practice the higher note embouchure is to use this straw. We put our wet part of our lips together firmly, holding the straw. Kind of make your lips fight against each other very firmly. Blow through it. Then remove the straw, but try to keep the same lip opening as you have with the straw. Again, let me show you that again. Sometimes it's helpful to even make that kind of sound. So, when we're doing the lower note, we have a large lip opening. And then, for the higher note, much smaller. First of all, you want to practice the tricky head joint exercises on page 9 with the NumeraPro. For the low note, we're spinning the lowest wheel, but we bring our lips forward with a smaller opening to spin the second wheel for the high note. We're not overblowing to get it. We're simply moving our lips and changing the size of the lip opening.
Now we're ready to play the first exercise on page 9 with the NumeraPro. So remember, when we're playing the low note, we want to spin the lowest wheel and saying the word po, and then we want to bring our lips forward for the high note and use a smaller embouchure and say P. Let's try it. 1, 2, ready, and. Great. Now let's do that with the head joint. So cover the end with the palm of your hand. 1, 2, ready. Great job. Now there's another high note that's even higher that we can do on the head joint. So here was our low note with the end open. Now if we use a teeny tiny opening, if you notice where we're bringing the lips way forward, so here was our low. I'm going to bring it almost to half for the high. Low, high. Now it's extremely important to not roll the flute in to cover more. Notice how low the pitch is? That is a very bad thing to do. It's just something that you never want to do, is to be rolling that flute in to get that high note. It's very important to be able to go and reach those lips forward. So here. And let's do that on the NumeraPro. So, for our lowest note, we're going to be down saying po on the lowest fan. And then we're going to bring our lips way forward and reach for this third fan. So here's low, po, and then P with a tiny opening. Po and P with a tiny opening. So here's low. Reach forward. Now, if you're doing it correctly, the high note should actually be a little softer than the lower note. When we're playing softly, the air is higher. If I were going to play that high note very, very loudly, I would want to keep the air down on that lowest one so it wouldn't become sharp. But that's more advanced. What we want to know now is that this is our low note and this is our high note, and we're going to play it softly because we're going to use a very small opening. So let's do our exercise first on the NumeraPro. Ready? Great job. Now we're ready to do that with the flute. 1, 2. Great job.
And finally, practice holding those notes as long as possible. Until you can hold it for a really long time.